I'm going to depart from my normal procedure, which is to not prepare remarks, because I like not to know what I'm going to say. But Hitch was too important to give out random words, so I've actually prepared some remarks. The last time I saw him, our discussions ranged from subjects relating to the nature of nothingness, quantum mechanics, and the obscenity that is capital punishment, the madness that governs the religious fanaticism infecting both sides of the Middle East conflict, the embarrassment that is Catholicism, and a related subject, the intellectual laziness and pretentious nonsense that encompasses so much of religious faith and theological noise in our popular culture. Christopher was not a scientist, but he was fascinated by the power of science, not merely its possible impact on human affairs, but more importantly for him and for me, the remarkable ideas that it generates. He realized that knowledge is not to be gained for comforting our souls, but for enhancing the awareness of being alive. There are two personal aspects of Christopher that may not be apparent to a broader audience, and I want to spend a minute on each. First, what I found so refreshing about talking to the man is that one could never be quite sure about what he'd say about any given subject. For many of us, when we meet like-minded friends, we can remain complacent in the knowledge that we're pretty sure they'll agree with us, or at least we know what they're going to say. But Christopher approached each subject in its own context, not in the context of liberalism or atheism or any ism. He realized that knowledge is not to be gained for comforting our souls, but for enhancing the awareness of being alive. He had close friends with whom he was diametrically opposed. Francis Collins, a friend of both of ours, is head of the National Institutes of Health. His religious ideas border on the nutty, if you ever listen to them. But not only was he a close friend of Christopher's, in fact, he helped him tremendously in the last months of his life, and he served, in fact, as his medical advisor and friend. Being able to befriend and charm even your intellectual enemies is something we can all learn from. We can all emulate as we try to bring the light of reason into a world which so often shuts it out. It requires courage and self-confidence combined with the ability to simply enjoy people as people. I want to come close to the end with a bit of advice which he gave, and I think it's particularly pertinent to this meeting. In his book, Letters to a Young Contrarian, he said, "We are an adaptable species, and this adaptability has enabled us to survive. However, adaptability can also constitute a threat. We may become habituated to certain dangers and fail to recognize them until it is too late. You exist at the whim of people whose power does not derive from your consent, and who regard you as expendable and disposable. You merely fail to notice the moment at which you were conscripted. A normal life consists in living as if this most salient of facts was not a fact at all. Try your hardest to combat atrophy and routine. To question the obvious and the given is an essential element of the maximum de omnibus dubitandum. Doubt everything."
Whenever I give a lecture, I show pictures from, let's say, from the Hubble Space Telescope, a picture of a cluster of galaxies. I mean, the poetry of it, well, we've both talked about the poetry of science, but the spiritual inspiration you get from looking at a picture of a cluster of galaxies located 5 billion light years away from us, where every dot in that picture is a galaxy. The light from those stars left those stars before our sun and earth formed, which means that now many of the stars in that picture don't exist anymore. And if there were civilizations around those stars, each of those galaxies contains 100 billion stars. Any civilization that existed around those stars no longer may exist. It just opens your mind to wonder. And so I actually feel very strongly that while science per se may not provide the direct consolation, it can and it should provide a spiritual, not only wonder, but it should provide a spiritual consolation. Look, when we we tell our kids fairy tales to console them. We tell them to make their life fun. We talk about Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, but then we decide that, you know what, it's better for them to know how the world really works. And it may be a little less consoling, but in fact, knowing that they're in control of their lives actually is empowering. And many of us, if you're a good parent, you want to teach your kids how to become empowered. And yet, but religion, and in religion they're often talked about the flock, the children, it effectively treats you like a child. It says it's better for you to believe a fable than reality. We are so lucky to be alive today and endowed with a consciousness where we, for whatever fortuitous reasons, on a random star in a random galaxy in the middle of nowhere, we are able to evolve a consciousness, live on a relatively quiescent planet. And so I actually think science can provide a real consolation by saying, look, once you accept reality, it's liberating. The great thing about science is not knowing. That's what makes it exciting, is that there are mysteries remaining to be discovered. We don't understand the mystery of consciousness. We can talk about it, but we have no idea how it arises. That amazing that you have electrical impulses in your brain, which clearly, by the way, are very different than computers. Vastly different than computers, because you can argue from a physics perspective that if you built a digital computer that had the storage capability of the human brain and the processing power, it would require 10 terawatts. The human brain uses about 10 watts. So somehow we are 10 million times more efficient than digital computers. We don't understand that. That's amazing.